They say time heals all wounds. But what if healing doesn't come from time, but from the words we never said? These are the letters that healed me. They say the sea never forgets. It carries everything, memories, whispers, even the things we wish to let go of. I've lived beside the sea for 53 years. It used to sound like laughter, like music drifting from the kitchen window. Now it sounds like time, slow, patient, and endlessly repeating. Since Robert passed, the house has grown quieter each day. Not the gentle kind of quiet, not peace. No, this is the kind of silence that hums in your chest, that makes you notice the ticking of the clock, the creak of every floorboard. Sometimes I catch myself listening, as if he might still call my name from another room. He never does, of course. But old habits have a way of pretending hope is still possible. Every morning, I open the curtains out of duty, not desire. The sunlight spills in, highlighting the dust that dances above the piano, the same piano I haven't touched in years. Robert used to love when I played. I'd tell him I wasn't any good, but he said it wasn't the music that mattered. It's the sound of you being alive, he'd say. Funny how quiet the world becomes when no one is left to remind you that you're still alive. I spend my days keeping busy. That's what people tell you to do when you're old and alone. Keep busy. I cook small meals I rarely finish, water plants that don't need it, and sort through drawers filled with things that once seemed too important to throw away. Yesterday, I found one of Robert's ties still hanging in the closet. The fabric had faded, but when I pressed it to my face, I could almost smell him soap, coffee, and the faint scent of cedar from his workbench. I stood there longer than I should have, holding on to something I couldn't have anymore. Grief is strange like that. It doesn't always arrive with tears. Sometimes, it just lingers quietly, sitting in the corners of your house, waiting for you to notice it again. It was on a Tuesday afternoon, I remember, because the radio was playing an old jazz tune when I decided to clean the attic. Not out of necessity, really. Just to fill the hours between lunch and sunset. The air up there was thick with dust and memory. Boxes stacked high, labeled in Robert's handwriting, Christmas, summer clothes, Eleanor's paints. I hadn't opened them in decades. But in one corner, hidden beneath a faded blanket, was something different, a small wooden box, its corners worn smooth by time. When I lifted the lid, the smell of old paper and lavender filled the air. Inside was a bundle of letters tied together with a blue ribbon, the kind I used to wear in my hair when I was young. And there, right on top, was a single unfinished letter. The paper was yellowed, the ink slightly blurred. But I recognized the handwriting instantly. It was mine. My hands trembled as I unfolded it. It was dated June 3, 1963. I must have been 20. The words read, "Dear future me, I hope you've become someone brave. Someone who doesn't give up on herself. Someone who still believes in love, even when it hurts. I stopped reading after that. The letters blurred before my eyes. I couldn't remember writing it, and yet, there was something painfully familiar in those words. It was as if a younger version of me had reached through time to touch my hand, to ask, "Did we make it?" That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, listening to the waves crash against the shore, wondering what that young girl would think if she saw me now, a widow, gray-haired, alone, talking to ghosts and dust. Would she be proud? Or disappointed? I thought about the dreams I had back then. Painting. Traveling. Falling in love and never losing myself. I did some of those things. But not all. Life has a way of taking the edges off your dreams. You start with fire in your chest, and then one day you wake up realizing you've learned to live with smoke instead. Still, as I stared at that letter, I felt something stir inside me, a feeling I hadn't known in years. Not sadness. Not even nostalgia. It was curiosity. The next morning, I brewed tea and sat by the window where the light was softest. The wooden box sat in front of me, waiting. And before I could talk myself out of it, I took out a piece of paper and began to write. Dear younger me, you asked if I've become someone brave. The truth is, sometimes. There were days I stood tall, and days I could barely breathe. I've lost people I thought I couldn't live without, and I've learned that somehow painfully, slowly you do live without them. But you carry them. In every quiet morning, in every song, in every breath. I paused. The words looked fragile on the page, like they might disappear if I looked too long. Then I kept writing. You wanted to be someone extraordinary. You became someone real instead. And maybe that's braver. When I signed my name Eleanor, I felt a warmth I couldn't explain. It wasn't happiness exactly, but something close. A softness. A return. For the first time in years, I felt less alone. The house didn't seem so silent anymore. Maybe it was because I had finally started listening not to the world outside, but to the voice I'd silenced long ago. That evening, I placed the new letter in the wooden box, beside the old one. Two voices now, one from the past, one from the present, whispering across time. And I realized, with a small smile, that maybe this was what healing looked like. Not a sudden light or a grand revelation. Just a woman, sitting by her window, writing to the girl she used to be. The sound of waves grows louder. Soft piano resumes. Dear younger me, I didn't become everything you dreamed of. But I became someone who can forgive us, and that feels enough. The second letter took its time arriving. It wasn't the paper or the pen that delayed me. It was the way some memories knock first, then wait politely in the hallway, unsure if they're welcome. For days, I went about my small routines: tea at 6, curtains at 7, water the fern that doesn't need it, glance at the piano, decide not to play. The wooden box sat on the table like a sleeping cat, quiet but present, asking nothing and everything at once. When I finally lifted the lid again, I didn't feel brave. I felt honest. That would have to be enough. I smoothed a fresh sheet of stationery, the kind with a faint blue border, and I wrote, "Dear younger me, you asked for the truth. Here it is. Regret is not a storm. It is a mist. It does not break you in half. It softens the edges until you're not sure where you end and the past begins." I paused, listening to the ocean breathe. The tide was low, the shore a long ribbon of memory. It pulled me back without force, just invitation, and I let it. I remembered the summer I met Robert. I was 19 and newly in love with everything: paint under my nails, turpentine on my fingertips, the way color could forgive what words could not. I was working afternoons at a cafe that smelled like cinnamon and sea salt, sketching faces on napkins when no one was looking. He came in with hair too tidy for a beach town and eyes that laughed before his mouth did. He ordered coffee black and asked for extra sugar, then kept talking to me until both went cold. He was not the life I had imagined, but he was a life I could imagine loving. We courted the way people used to, notes slipped into books, long walks after church when the sky stretched forever. He listened as if every sentence had a door inside it. I told him I wanted to paint for a living, and he didn't flinch. He only asked what the studio would smell like in winter and whether I'd hang my first finished canvas in the kitchen, so he could look at it while he burned toast. I thought that kind of listening was a promise. Maybe it was. Maybe it wasn't. We marry promises and wake to routines. We promise art and turn toward laundry. We promise forever and receive Tuesdays, mostly. We married in a small chapel with big windows. I wore my mother's dress and a veil my aunt insisted would bring good fortune, though I suspect she meant good behavior. When we danced that night, I wasn't thinking of chores or dishes or the price of lemons. I was thinking of color, a whole life's worth of it, and the way his hand felt steady at the small of my back. The first small regret didn't look like regret at all. It was a job. Just until we save for the studio, I said, smiling at my own reasonableness. A receptionist position. Stable hours, a reliable paycheck, the kind of work you could explain without apology. The studio would come later. The art would wait. Art was patient, wasn't it? Paints dried in their tubes. The easel leaned against the wall like a guest left standing too long at the door. I told myself there would be time. Years have taught me that later is a kind of drawer where we put the selves we aren't ready to be. Mine filled quickly: a sketchbook, a list of galleries, a flyer for night classes in oil technique, a subway map to a city where the museums were. Every time I meant to reach for the drawer, something else asked for my hands. Marriage, then money, then diapers, then dinners, then homework, then holidays. I am not ashamed of the life we built. I am only tender with the one I set aside to build it. In the letter I wrote, you didn't betray your art by loving your family. You only forgot that art was part of the family too. I forgive you. Forgiveness is a quiet verb. It doesn't make a sound when it lands. But I felt something unclench in my chest, not a triumph, more like an exhale I'd been holding since I was 22. Regret also had a sharper edge, a class I didn't take. I remember the brochure, thick paper that felt like a decision. A night course at the community college, figure painting in oils. Tuesdays and Thursdays. Reasonably priced. I circled it in blue ink and left it on the kitchen table where decisions went to live or die. When Robert came home, I showed it to him and waited for the yes I'd already rehearsed receiving. "Will you have the energy?" he asked. He was kind about it. He was always kind. Work has been a lot, El. Just 2 evenings, I said. He nodded, the pause barely a breath. We'll make it work. We nearly did. Then our radiator broke. The car needed tires. Someone at work resigned and I was asked to stay late just through the busy season. Busy seasons have an odd habit of introducing themselves as temporary and leaving without farewell 2 years later. I missed the first class. Then the second. Then the semester. You will be tempted to imagine a fight, a slammed door, a dramatic declaration. It wasn't like that. It was emails I didn't send, calls I didn't make, painting clothes that stayed clean. In the letter, you think courage is grand. Sometimes it is. Sometimes courage is taking a chair to the table where your life is being decided and saying, I would like Tuesday nights. You didn't. I forgive you. Next time, bring the chair. The hardest regret to name was the gentlest to remember, small ways I was unkind to myself. There is a mythology women inherit about goodness that it is a room with a single chair, that we are invited to sit only if everyone else is comfortable first. I wore that mythology like an heirloom dress. It fit poorly, but it pleased the relatives. I kept a ledger in my head not of money, but of worth. How much I had earned a rest. How much I had earned a joy. How much I had earned a voice. The math never favored me. Years later, I would watch my daughter carry a similar ledger and want to snatch it from her hands. But you cannot save your children from arithmetic you never learned to refuse. In the letter, you will spend too long treating yourself like a guest in your own life. Invite yourself in. Put your name on the envelope. Sign the painting. Wear the red scarf. I wrote until my hand cramped a small pain, simple and alive. Outside, a gull cried once and quieted, as if satisfied by the confession. Of course, not all regret is mine alone. Marriage is a chorus, not a solo. There were things Robert could have done differently: louder support, clearer permission, Fewer small jokes about our starving artist when company came over. He meant them fondly. Fondness can still bruise. One winter, when the house was new and the love newer, I set up the easel by the window where the afternoon light lay warm. I sketched while a pot of soup bubbled. Robert came home early, kissed my temple, and stood behind me. "You're good," he said. Then he added, almost as punctuation, "You're really good for someone who hasn't been trained." A kindness with a shadow. I felt the door to that night class swing shut again, though neither of us touched it. I do not lay this at his feet. I lay it carefully between us, as you would place a thin porcelain plate you love, visible, breakable, worthy of care. In the letter, he loved you in the language he knew. You needed a dialect he never learned. Neither of you was wrong. Learn to translate. The tenderest page was for my mother. She believed in usefulness the way sailors believe in the horizon, with certainty, with devotion, with the suspicion that anything beyond it would drown you. When I said I wanted to be an artist, she smiled the way you smile at a child asking to keep lightning in a jar. "It's beautiful," she said, smoothing my hair. "And what will you do that keeps the lights on?" I thought for years that her question killed something in me. Now I think it taught me the cost of electricity. Both are true. In the letter, she gave you the tools she had. Build a room for both of you, one with lights and a window. Plug in the lamp. Paint the sky. By the time the kettle cooled, the page was a small geography, rivers of blue ink, shallow lakes where tears had settled and dried. I read the words aloud, not to test them, but to give them sound. Sentences grow braver when they hear themselves spoken. A sudden memory rose, bright and particular, the first painting I ever sold. It was an accident. I was 23 and convinced I'd already missed the last train to the life I wanted. On a dare from a friend, I hung 2 canvases in the cafe. One was a bowl of lemons. The other, a street at dusk, the kind of purple the sky becomes when it has secrets. A woman in a green coat pointed, called me over, and asked the price. I made one up and regretted it immediately. Too low, too high, wrong tone, wrong century, until she pressed money into my palm and said, "Thank you. I've been waiting to look at this all my life." I should have framed that sentence. Instead, I spent the money on groceries and promised myself I would paint another. I did, once. Then life asked for other things. Regret isn't only what you did not do. Sometimes it's what you did once and did not dare again. I added a postscript. When wonder knocks, do not ask for 3 forms of identification. Open the door. I sealed the envelope, pressed it flat, and set it with the first. 2 now like bookends, like hands clasped across a table. Afternoon poured honey over the piano. On impulse, the gentle, old-fashioned kind, I lifted the fall board and placed my fingers where they used to know their way. I played badly. It was wonderful. The wrong notes sounded like rain on a tin roof, earnest, forgiving. I didn't cry. I thought I might. Instead, I laughed once, softly, at the way joy sometimes sneaks in wearing the coat of a beginner. I made soup that evening, the way I did when the children were small and winter hung around the door. I set one bowl for myself and, out of habit that was no longer sorrow, looked at the chair where Robert would have Saturday. You would have added too much pepper, I told him. And I would have eaten it anyway. When I washed the bowl, the window fogged and cleared, a small theater of disappearance and return. That was the day's lesson, I suppose. Most things worth keeping are not kept by force but by practice. A life. A marriage. A self. Before bed, I opened the box once more. At the bottom, beneath the ribbon's tail, I noticed a faded sheet I hadn't seen. Not a letter. A list. In my younger handwriting. Things to be by 30. Brave. Kind. Married. A painter. A mother. A woman who knows where she's going. I smiled at the sweetness of it. At the hubris. At the ache. I took a pen and added, in my older hand. A woman who loves the one who didn't always know. A woman who forgives the one who learned too late. A woman who goes, even if she doesn't know where. I set the list back, closed the lid, and turned off the light. In the dark, the sea went on being itself endless, unashamed, unafraid of the shore it broke upon and left and broke upon again. Regret visited that night in a different dress. It didn't accuse. It curled up at the foot of the bed, purring like a cat that had been hungry for years and finally trusted the food would come again tomorrow. In the morning, I would write another letter. Not about regret this time. About love, not the sweeping kind that burns postcards, but the daily kind that folds linens, buys lemons, and stands at the sink singing to a bowl of roses that won't last the week. But for now, I slept not the sleep of the untroubled, but the sleep of the forgiven. Love changes its face as you age. It starts as a song you can't stop humming, and ends as the hum itself, the quiet between the notes. When I began this third letter, I didn't intend to write about love. I thought I'd said all I could say. But love, like the sea, always finds its way back, doesn't it? It seeps through the cracks of even the most ordinary morning. The rain had been falling since dawn, soft and patient. It drummed against the kitchen window like the fingers of someone waiting for an answer. I made tea, sat by the table, and watched the steam blur the glass. On the table before me the wooden box, the blue ribbon, the letters resting like folded wings. I lifted the second envelope, already knowing what it wanted from me. It wanted honesty. It wanted him. Dear younger me, I wrote. You fell in love quickly. But not carelessly. It was true. Robert and I never planned to collide. We simply did. And when the world felt too wide, we built something smaller, a house with creaking floors and a stubborn garden that never quite bloomed when we wanted it to. He was patient with the things that mattered, impatient with the things that didn't. He loved black coffee, crossword puzzles, and telling the same story twice because he liked the sound of my laughter the first time. He whistled off key. He never remembered where the scissors were. And somehow, all of that became holy. There is a photograph on the wall, the two of us, younger, standing beside a car we couldn't afford, both smiling like we'd just invented joy. When I look at it now, I realize we were building a life, not knowing how fragile life can be. Love in your 20s feels endless. You think time owes you decades. You think saying forever makes it true. But love is not about how long. It's about how deeply you notice the other person while you still can. We were happy not in the way movies promise, but in the quiet ways that keep you anchored. Shared jokes. Grocery lists. The way his hand always found mine while crossing the street, long after we stopped needing to. I wish I could say we never hurt each other. But love that lasts is not the absence of hurt. It's learning to come home anyway. We fought, of course. Over things that seem small now: money, exhaustion, the noise of the TV. Once, after an argument, he went to bed angry, and I stayed up painting just to feel like I could still be myself. The next morning, he brought coffee to my table, said nothing, and kissed the back of my head. That's how we apologized, not with words, but with gestures stitched into the fabric of everyday life. In my letter, I wrote, "You will love a man who frustrates you and fills you at once. You will learn that love is not a fairy tale. It is a daily choosing to listen, to forgive, to stay." When the children came, the house filled with noise again, the good kind. Robert built a crib by hand, sanded every corner until it was smooth enough for sleep. We were so young, and so terrified, and so sure that love alone would be enough to hold the world together. For a time, it was. Then came the years of routine, the middle chapters people never write about. Lunchboxes, bills, soccer practice, fatigue. The passion didn't fade, it just changed clothes. Love began wearing housecoats and carrying grocery bags, humming lullabies instead of ballads. I remember one night, after the children were asleep, we stood in the kitchen under the dim light. He said, "I miss you, El." I said, "I'm right here." But what we both meant was we missed who we used to be. It happens quietly, that distance. You look up one day and realize the person sitting across from you knows your habits but not your thoughts anymore. And yet, you keep setting the table for two. There was one winter when I thought we might not find our way back. It was after his mother died, and the grief turned him silent. He began spending hours in the garage, fixing things that weren't broken. I tried to reach him, but he built walls out of sawdust and sorrow. Then, One night, I found him asleep in the chair, a half-built birdhouse on his lap. I covered him with a blanket, and saw, on the workbench, a note written in his uneven scrawl. For Eleanor, so the birds will have somewhere to land. I cried then, not because I was sad, but because love sometimes looks like a man building something small and calling it enough. In my letter, I wrote, "You will learn that love is made of the smallest mercies. A hand that steadies. A voice that softens. A kindness that says, 'I see you,' even when you're hidden." We grew old together without noticing. That's how aging happens, slowly, then all at once. The hair grays, the knees ache, the laughter takes longer to recover from, and still, you swear you're the same people you were at 25. One spring, he forgot where he'd left his glasses. Then he forgot he was looking for them. I joked about his memory, but there was a weight in my chest I didn't name. A few months later, we sat in the doctor's office, holding hands tighter than we had in years. "Early signs," the doctor said. "We'll manage it." We did, for a while. But memory is a cruel thief. It doesn't take everything at once. It steals slowly, kindly, as if it doesn't want you to notice until it's too late. There came a day when he asked me my name. And though I'd prepared for it, nothing prepares you for the sound of your life being unlearned by the person you love most. The day he forgot me, I remembered everything. Every first, every fight, every morning we'd built like a quiet promise. I told him stories about us as if I were describing a favorite book. Some nights he smiled and said, "That sounds beautiful." And I would whisper, "It was." When he passed, I didn't cry right away. I sat in the silence of our room, my hands folded over the blanket we'd shared for 50 years, and felt the sea roaring inside me, not in anger, but in awe of how vast love could be. I looked down at the letter in front of me and wrote, "You will lose him. But losing him will not mean losing love. Love will stay in the scent of coffee, in the squeak of the back door, in the shape of your hands learning to hold nothing and call it enough." I stopped there, for a long while. Outside, the rain had eased. The sky turned that soft, impossible pink the sea loves to borrow. I thought about the day of the funeral, how the church smelled like lilies, how our children tried to be brave. How I placed his wedding band in the pocket of my dress, so a part of him could stay close to my heart. Grief doesn't end. It only changes its shape from something heavy you carry to something small you wear, like a pendant under your blouse. That evening, I went to the garden, the one that never listened to me, where the roses grew wild and the herbs refused to stay in their rows. I knelt in the damp soil and pressed the letter deep into the earth, beneath the hydrangea he'd planted the year we retired. "Here," I whispered, "is where we'll keep it. You were the roots, and I was the rain." The breeze lifted, gentle and full of salt. I imagined him beside me, smiling, shaking his head. He would tell me I was being sentimental again. And I would tell him, yes. Isn't it wonderful? When I went back inside, the kettle had gone cold, but the house no longer felt empty. Love does that, it leaves you alone, and then it fills the room again without knocking. I took a new sheet of paper and wrote, quietly. Dear younger me. You thought love was fire. But love is water. It carves you slowly, shapes you gently. And even when it leaves you softer. When people talk about love, they rarely mention the courage it takes to stay after it changes or the grace it takes to let it go when it must. If I could tell that young woman anything, I'd tell her this. Don't chase the spark. Keep the light. Don't cling to the man who loved you first, grow with the one who stays. And when the day comes that you have to say goodbye, do it the way he built birdhouses, with gentleness, and the hope that something small might still find a place to rest. He's gone now. But every morning, the sea sounds like his voice. Maybe love never leaves. Maybe it just learns to speak in different tongues. There are some letters that arrive before you're ready to read them. This one waited quietly for me, tucked beneath the others, as if it knew I'd need more time. Forgiveness doesn't come quickly, not even when you're old enough to understand why it matters. When I finally sat down to write this one, the house felt especially still. Outside, the sky was the pale blue of forgiveness itself, clear, tender, without demand. I made myself a cup of chamomile tea, the way I do when I need courage without caffeine. Then I unfolded a fresh sheet of paper and whispered, "All right, my dear. Let's tell the truth this time. Dear younger me," I began. "You will be a mother someday. And you will not always get it right." The words came easier than I expected. Maybe because I'd been rehearsing them for years, in sighs, in apologies, in the way I sometimes lingered on old photographs too long. Motherhood is a strange country. You arrive with no map, no language, just a heart too big for your chest and hands that never feel skilled enough for what they must hold. You learn by stumbling. And you love fiercely, imperfectly, endlessly. When I was young, I believed love alone could raise a child. That if I poured enough of myself into them, they'd grow strong and kind and untouched by my mistakes. But love is not insulation. It's illumination. It shows everything, even the cracks. My children grew up on the sound of waves and the smell of coffee. They also grew up on my tiredness, my distractions, my silences. There were nights when I was so busy being everyone else's strength that I forgot they needed to see my softness too. One evening, when my daughter was about 10, she asked me, "Mom, are you happy?" I smiled and said yes, of course. But what I wanted to say was, "I'm trying." Even now, I wish I'd said that, not because it was truer, but because it would have taught her that trying is enough. In the letter, I wrote, "You will think good mothers never fail. You will learn that good mothers fail, apologize, and keep trying anyway. You will learn that perfection is not love, presence is. When my son was a teenager, he stopped talking to me for a while. No shouting, no big rebellion, just a quiet wall where his laughter used to live. He wanted space, and I mistook that for rejection. It took me years to understand that growing up sometimes means walking away, not because you don't love your mother, but because you need to find the parts of yourself she couldn't teach you. We made peace eventually, not through speeches, but through Sunday breakfasts, small talk about weather, laughter that came back slowly, like an old song remembered. Still, I carry the weight of every time I said be careful instead of I believe in you. And every time I scolded when I should have asked, what are you afraid of? In my letter, I wrote, forgive yourself for the times you mistook fear for love. Forgive yourself for wanting to protect them from pain. You didn't fail them by worrying, you failed yourself by thinking you weren't allowed to. Forgiveness, I've learned, is not a declaration. It's a habit. You practice it like breathing. Sometimes shallow, sometimes deep, but always again. After Robert died, the children started visiting less often. Not because they didn't care, life just becomes noisy when you're building one of your own. At first, I resented their silence. I took it as forgetting. Then one afternoon, my daughter called from the city. She was crying. I'm sorry, Mom, she said, I just don't know how to balance everything. Work, the kids, myself, it's too much. I listened. And I heard myself, the younger me, exhausted and guilty and afraid of disappointing everyone. So I told her what I should have told myself 50 years ago. You're doing your best, sweetheart. And that's already everything. That night, I wrote a new line in my letter. One day your children will call you from their own chaos. They will think they've failed. You will remind them that they haven't, and in doing so, you will finally believe it for yourself. It's easy to talk about forgiving others. It's much harder to talk about forgiving the woman in the mirror. There are nights when I still see her, the younger Eleanor, standing in the kitchen, frustrated, biting back tears because the soup burned and the baby's crying, and the man she loves doesn't understand how heavy small things can be. I used to hate her for not being stronger. Now, I want to hug her. She was doing the best she could with what she knew. And that, I think, is what most forgiveness is. Looking back at the person you were and saying, you didn't know then what you know now. And that's okay. A few months ago, my son brought his daughter, my granddaughter, to visit. She has his same stubborn chin, my same curious eyes. While he fixed a loose window latch, she sat beside me, drawing a picture of the sea. She said, "Grandma, do you ever get scared?" I thought about lying. But instead, I told her the truth. "All the time," I said. "But I also get brave again." She smiled. Me too. That's how legacy works, I think. Not through money or monuments, but through honesty, one generation quietly handing the next a truth gentle enough to hold. In my letter, I added, "You will think your mistakes ruined something. But they were simply the soil your children would grow from. Be kind to the soil. Without it, nothing blooms." That evening, I took out the piano sheet. Robert had always loved a simple tune, full of pauses and longing. My fingers stumbled through it. Halfway through, I stopped and laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was human. Forgiveness feels a lot like that, messy, uneven, but still music. Later, I went for a walk by the water. The sun was low, the air carrying that salt-heavy scent of endings. I thought about all the apologies I never gave and all the ones I never received. Maybe they balanced out. Maybe they didn't. But I know this love remains, even when words don't. I bent down and wrote with my finger in the wet sand. "I forgive you." The tide rolled in and washed it away. For once, that felt right. Forgiveness isn't meant to be kept. It's meant to be released. When I got home, the house smelled of rain and dust and something new, peace, maybe. I placed the letter beside the others in the wooden box, tied the ribbon again, and smiled. 4 letters now. 4 versions of myself sitting side by side. The girl who dreamed. The woman who loved. The mother who tried. And the old soul who finally understood. I whispered to them all. We did our best, didn't we? And somewhere, I could almost hear a chorus of my younger selves replying, "Yes, we did. Dear younger me, you will forgive more than you thought possible. Your children, your mother, your husband, yourself. Forgiveness doesn't erase the story. It changes how it ends." Some mornings, I wake and forget what day it is. It doesn't matter anymore. When you've lived long enough, time stops being measured in days, it's measured in moments of peace. This morning, the sea is gentle. Light spills through the window, coating the room in that soft golden haze only found in early spring. I pour a cup of tea, sit by the table, and see the wooden box waiting for me. Its corners are darker now, the blue ribbon frayed but still holding. Inside, the letters rest quietly like dreams that have finally gone to sleep. I touch them, each one, each version of myself written in ink and time. Every letter is a lifetime. Every word, a return. And I know it's time for the last one. Dear younger me, I write. This will be our final letter. The pen moves slowly, careful not to wake the past. I've written to you about regret, about love, about forgiveness. Now I want to write about the only thing that ever mattered. Becoming whole. Wholeness. I used to think it was a destination, a place where nothing hurt, nothing lacked, where someone or something would make me complete. But I've learned that wholeness isn't the absence of cracks. It's learning to love yourself through them. When I was young, I lived like life was an endless test. Trying to be right, to be loved, to be enough. I was terrified of mistakes, of loss, of being unworthy. Now, looking back, I see how much life I missed while chasing perfection. We are not meant to be flawless, my dear. We are meant to feel, to break, to love, to forgive, to return. Wholeness, I think, is what happens when you can sit in a room full of your memories, look at your life, and smile, without wishing for anything to change. Yesterday, I dreamed again. I was young, my hands smooth, my hair shining chestnut, my eyes clear as a river in summer. I was standing in a field of lavender. The wind was gentle. And Robert was there. He didn't say a word. He just held my hand, reminding me that even the sharpest pain eventually softens. When I woke, there were tears on my cheeks. But they weren't sad tears. They felt like coming home. You used to be afraid of being alone, I wrote. But you were never truly alone. The people you loved never left. They simply moved from the world outside, into your heart. You once thought growing old was the end. But it's not. It's the return to the girl you once were, the woman you became, and the soul that learned to love them both. I look out at the sea. The water is calm, a perfect mirror for the sky. I think of all the versions of myself. The dreamer of 20. The lover. The mother. And now, this old woman, writing the final chapter of her own forgiveness. For so long, I resented time for taking too much. Now I see, time doesn't take. It transforms. It turns loss into memory. Memory into lesson. And lesson into peace. A soft wind stirs the paper. I pause and breathe deeply. I remember something my mother once told me. Don't try to hold everything, sweetheart. You can't cup the sea in your hands. Now I understand. Wholeness isn't about holding on. It's about letting go. Letting go of what's gone. Letting go of the fear of losing more. Because what's truly meant to stay will stay, quietly, inside you. I stand and step onto the porch. The garden glows in the honey-colored light of evening. The lavender Robert planted still blooms, faint and fragrant in the breeze. I hold the letter gently, fold it, and tie it to the others with the same blue ribbon. Then I whisper, "This is our last letter, my dear." Not because the story is over, but because we finally understand it. Night falls softly. I light the small lamp by the table, a glow warm enough to remember by. My shadow dances faintly on the wall, small but unmistakably alive. I set my teacup beside the wooden box and open the window. The ocean air enters, full of salt and song. I close my eyes. And in that tender darkness, I hear her. The younger me. Reading my words aloud. Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for learning how to love me. And thank you for staying. Even after everything changed. When I open my eyes, the stars are out. No fear. No ache. Just that quiet weightlessness that comes when you finally release what was never meant to be held. I smile, whispering to the night. I am enough. Dear younger me. Thank you for beginning. Thank you for daring to love, to fail, to forgive, to live. I didn't become perfect. But I became whole. And that, my love, is the most beautiful thing we can ever be.